They spent 16 years looking for him. 16 years, helicopters, tips, surveillance, dead ends. And the strange thing is, most people who disappear want to be forgotten. He didn't. He just wanted to be left alone. Before we go on, if late-night true stories are your thing, take a second to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. James Whitey Bulger was born in 1929 in South Boston, the kind of neighborhood where everybody knows your last name and your mistakes travel faster than you do. Triple-decker houses, church bells from St. Monica's, the smell of the harbor drifting up from the piers. He was one of 6 kids. His father worked the docks until an accident ended that life. After that, the family slipped into hard times. Not movie poverty, just counting coins, hand-me-down coats, quiet dinners. Jimmy walked past Broadway Street every day, past those same corner stores, same men leaning against brick walls, watching, talking low. He learned early who people stepped around and who people crossed the street to avoid. Once, after a fight near Old Harbor Village, an older kid said to him, "You barely blinked." Jimmy just said, "Wasn't worth blinking for." By his teens, trouble found him easily. Gangs, small thefts, long nights. By 21, he was on a bus headed away from South Boston toward a prison cell, and inside those walls, the government would find him, quietly, and the real story would begin. The bus didn't stop in any place that felt familiar. No harbors, no corner stores, no voices calling his name, just gray buildings and razor wire. In the early 1950s, Jimmy Bulger landed in federal prison in Atlanta, young, angry, quiet the same way he'd always been. Inside those walls, noise never stopped, shouting, metal doors, men losing their minds one night at a time. He kept to himself at first, read books from the library, watched everyone, learned who talked too much, learned who survived by saying nothing. Then one day a guard called his name, no explanation, just, "Bulger, you volunteered." He hadn't, but his name was already on a list. The government doctors told him it was a medical study, help science, help your sentence, maybe go home earlier. They gave him pills, strange colors. Sometimes he felt electricity in his bones, sometimes the walls breathed, sometimes his thoughts scattered like birds. Years later, he would say quietly, "They played with my head." Months went by, maybe years. Time bent inside those walls. When he finally walked out of prison, he wasn't the same South Boston kid who went in. The drugs didn't soften him, they sharpened him, stripped away hesitation, stripped away fear. The world felt slower after that, and when he returned to South Boston, every face looked different, even the ones that used to feel safe, because now he understood power from the inside. South Boston had changed while he was gone. Same streets, same brick houses, but the energy felt sharper now, faster, louder. Jimmy could feel it the moment he stepped back onto Broadway Street. He didn't rush into anything. He never did. He listened first, sat in coffee shops near Andrew Square, walked past the old bars, took slow mental notes of who was still around and who wasn't. That's when he crossed paths with Howie Winter. Winter ran the Winter Hill Gang out of Somerville, smart, organized, respected. Different from the wild crews Jimmy grew up around, less noise, more control. One night, over drinks not far from City Hall Plaza, Winter looked at him and said, "People still remember you." Jimmy answered, "Only the right ones." That was enough. Soon Jimmy was collecting debts again, running numbers, enforcing silence when it was needed. He didn't use much violence, he didn't have to. His calm made people nervous. They never knew when the moment would come. By the late 1960s, his name moved quietly through South Boston, not in headlines, but in whispers. He had men loyal to him, corners that belonged to him, money that came steady. But what he wanted most wasn't cash, it was control. And someone else was watching his rise closely from a government office across the river. By the early 1970s, Jimmy didn't need to introduce himself anymore. Doors opened before he knocked. Men stood a little straighter when he entered a room. South Boston bars were loud, Laughter, glasses clinking, jukebox humming, but his table stayed quiet. People brought him envelopes without being asked. Nobody counted the money in front of him. That would have been disrespect. He ran things calmly, no shouting, no show. If someone crossed a line, they didn't get embarrassed in public. They got a quiet talk in the back of a shop, and somehow word always spread without a scene. Once a young runner asked him, "Why don't you scare them more?" Jimmy took a slow drink and said, "They scare themselves." By this time, he wasn't just muscle anymore. He was strategy. Gambling, loan sharking, protection, all moving smoothly under his watch. And while the street saw a rising boss, the FBI saw something else, an opportunity. Because somewhere along the way, Jimmy Bulger became more than a criminal in their eyes. He became useful. Information for protection, silence for freedom, and that secret relationship was about to turn him into something far more dangerous than a gang leader. It would make him untouchable for a while. Loyalty looks simple from the outside. Inside, it's always messy. By the mid-1970s, Jimmy's circle felt tight, almost too tight. The same faces at the same tables, same glasses sliding across the same bars in Southie and Somerville. But something had changed. The laughter didn't linger as long. The pauses between words felt heavier. People had started to notice a pattern. Deals went bad, and somehow Jimmy always seemed a step ahead. Police raids missed him by minutes. Warrants landed on other names. Men who crossed him didn't just disappear, they vanished at the exact moments when their usefulness ran out. One night, an old associate leaned in close and muttered, "Funny how you always know when trouble's coming." Jimmy didn't look up. "Trouble makes noise," he said. "You just have to listen." But not everyone bought that. Rumors travel faster than truth in Boston. By the time whispers reached the docks and alleyways near Winter Hill, doubt had already taken a seat at the table. Was Jimmy protected, or was he trading something away? Some men stayed loyal out of fear. Others stayed because they needed him. A few stayed because they still believed, but belief is fragile, and someone very close to him was starting to listen to those whispers. By the late 1970s, Jimmy lived in two worlds at the same time. In one world, he sat in back rooms of South Boston bars, calm as ever, folding money into neat stacks. Men leaned in to hear him speak. His words still carried weight. In the other world, he was walking into quiet buildings downtown, past metal detectors, past men who didn't talk much, to meet his FBI handler, John Connolly. They'd grown up on the same streets, same schools, same prayers at St. Monica's. Connolly would slide a file across the desk and say, "You help us with the Italians, and you stay free." Jimmy would glance at the pages and reply, "I already plan to." Information flowed out of him, names, meetings, movements of the Italian Mafia in Boston. In return, warning flowed back, arrests he wouldn't face, warrants he'd outrun by hours. But even kings don't sleep easy. Jimmy started changing routines, different bars, different times. He walked farther than he needed to. He stopped standing with his back to doors. He trusted fewer people than ever, because protection creates power, but it also creates fear. You never know when the shield will drop. And somewhere in the shadows of Boston, someone was beginning to watch not as a rival, but as evidence. The first crack didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like paperwork. Late 1980s, Boston, courtrooms, hallways that smelled like old wood and coffee. One by one, men tied to Winter Hill started getting picked up. Not the small names, the serious ones, the kind who usually slipped away. Jimmy watched it from a distance. He still walked the same streets, still sat in the same quiet corners. But now he listened more than he spoke. His face didn't change much, but the timing of everything did. Meetings ended faster, conversations stayed unfinished. One night, someone close to him said quietly, "They're building something big." Jimmy replied, "They always are." But this time felt different. In 1994, the warning finally came, not as a rumor, not as a whisper, but as a clear sentence. An indictment was coming. Real charges. Real prison this time. No more last-minute favors. For once, the shield didn't hold. Instead of running loud, Jimmy did what he always did. He went silent. No goodbye, no speech, no closing chapter. One day he was there. The next day, he was gone. And Boston woke up realizing its most powerful ghost had just stepped out of the room. And this time, the hunt would be real. They caught him in 2011, not in some dramatic standoff, not running through alleys, just an apartment in Santa Monica, an old man behind a door. When they put the handcuffs on, he didn't fight, didn't beg, didn't explain. After 16 years on the run, James Whitey Bulger was finally still. They flew him back across the country, past the cities he once controlled, past the streets that once watched him, and placed him inside a federal prison cell. Concrete, steel, fluorescent lights that never fully go dark. For the first time in his life, he had nowhere to go. No meetings, no protection deals, no warning calls, just silence. He spent most of his days alone, reading, walking the same short path in the yard, eating meals without conversation. The man who once ruled neighborhoods now asked permission to move from one room to another. A guard once said to him, half curious, "Miss the old days?" Jimmy looked at the floor and answered, "Those days don't miss me." Isolation does strange things. It doesn't break everyone. For some, it sharpens memory, every decision, every face, every turn that led them here, and alone in that cell. The weight of everything he survived finally had time to sit beside him. By the time the world caught up to him, Jimmy Bulger was already an old man. White hair, slower steps. Hands that once moved quickly now took their time. The newspapers still used words like monster and kingpin, but behind the glass of a prison cell, what remained was just a man in his 80s waking up to the same walls every morning. Time works differently in prison. Days don't rush anymore. They settle. Jimmy spent hours thinking about South Boston, about the harbor wind, about the faces that used to fill rooms when he walked in. Some of those men were dead, some buried quietly, some lost to memory. He didn't talk much about regret. He never really had. But guards noticed the changes. He walked slower, sat longer. He fixed his sleeves even when no one was watching. Small habits of order in a place where nothing belonged to him. Once, during an intake transfer, another inmate muttered, "You used to scare the city." Jimmy looked at him and said softly, "Cities scare themselves." Power doesn't age well. It fades quietly like a sound moving down a long hallway. But legacy lingers. Some in Boston still whispered his name with fear, others with anger, a few with strange loyalty. Jimmy carried all of that with him, every version of who people thought he was, locked inside an aging body that could no longer outrun memory, and memory was about to become the last thing he had. In 2018, they transferred Jimmy Bulger to a new prison. Different walls, different faces, same silence. Less than a day later, he was dead. No courtroom ending, no final speech, no dramatic confession. Just a life that had moved quietly for decades, ending quietly in a concrete room. People still argue about what he was: monster, survivor, snitch, king. But here's the part that lingers when the noise fades. He built his world on loyalty, real loyalty, twisted loyalty, selective loyalty. And in the end, that same code couldn't save him from time, age, or consequence. Not because he was weak, but because no one outruns the full weight of their choices forever. Power fades, fear fades, even legend fades. But the habits remain, the silence remains. The way a man treated people when no one was watching, that stays with him. He outlived the world he built, not because he was lucky, but because for a long time he never broke his word to the wrong people. And in the end, that still wasn't enough. If this story made you think, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more true gangster stories told quietly, the way they really linger.